Something I find really interesting that Dead by Daylight likes to do is something called paragraph chapters. Now, if you're not aware, a paragraph chapter is a chapter that contains one character and one character only. This could be a killer or a survivor, but they will never come with their opposite role and they will never come with a map either. Paragraph chapters can either be full chapters, like, for example, Leatherface, Ghostface, Pinhead, Chucky, etc., or they could be half chapters like Bill, Ash, Michaela, Alan, etc., etc. In general, paragraph chapters seem to be an opportunity for the Dead by Daylight development team behavior to come up with bigger patches. I don't know if that's the way to put it. I want to say that's the way to put it. Basically, by only introducing one new character, they allow for a lot more room for things like reworks and overhauls, buffs and balance changes and things like that. And so looking at the history of paragraph chapters, I started thinking to myself whether or not this was always necessarily a good thing. Now, I want to make it clear that I am of the opinion that behavior releases new characters too often. In my, opinion, they tend to release a new character or new characters more often than not every 3 months or so. This is often the result of every new chapter comes with a new character. But like I said, sometimes even mid chapters come with new characters. So what ends up happening is the game gets kind of overloaded with teachables and killers and all sorts of other things, and it becomes very difficult to balance very quickly. I said back in my health and horror video that maybe behavior needs to start focusing on not releasing new content or new characters for like a year, and instead focus on doing overhauls and reworks and things like that. And in order to recoup some of their money that they might or might not lose, they could do things like do event sales and skin collections and things like that. But at the end of the day, I started thinking to myself, what else does paragraphs mean for Dead by Daylight? And is it necessarily a good thing? The first thing that came to my mind was a lack of maps. Now, I've got another video coming out later this week, hopefully, about map diversity within Dead by Daylight and why I'm just kind of irritated at the way that maps are designed. The biggest problem that I have is that a lot of the map selection in the game only consists really and honestly of like 5 realms. Like the vast majority is like 5 realms. Azarov's, Cockwind, Macmillan, Batum. It's half the maps in the game belong to those realms. And so a lot of times the game can feel samey and stale just due to the sheer lack of diversity within the aesthetics of the game. So every time they do a paragraph chapter, of which I counted 9, Bill, Leatherface, Ash, Ghostface, Pinhead, Michaela, Nicolas Cage, Chucky, and Alan Wake, every time they do one of these and they don't bring a map to the game, it's an additional slowdown toward the amount of diversity that we have within the game. So, for example, Leatherface, Ghostface, Pinhead, and Chucky are all killers, which is typically where we get maps from. Now, there are some chapters that didn't come with maps that aren't paragraph chapters, like Trickster, for example, or Twins. But paragraph chapters guarantee that you're not going to get a map. And so the map diversity within the game feels very stale almost, just because of the fact that they keep doing these paragraph chapters, and it's not exactly the best thing for us. And when I say keep doing the paragraph chapters, because I'm sure some people are going to be like, well, they don't do it all the time. And I understand that, but like there are 9 paragraph chapters. There are 30. We're about to hit, or we just hit chapter 31 with All Things Wicked, which means around a little less than a third of our chapters have been paragraph chapters, which means a little less than a third of our chapters have guaranteed that we will not have a map. Now, I do believe that micro breaks, quote unquote, for these paragraph chapters are needed because Well, to be realistic with you, it's kind of difficult to always come up with a killer and a survivor to go with it, right? Because you got to understand, when you're coming up with a killer, you don't just come up with the killer. You come up with the killer, the powers, the add-ons, the teachables, and then how that killer synergizes with every other teachable in the game. Survivors are a lot easier because all you have to worry about is their teachables and how their teachables synergize, but with killers, it could be a lot more complicated. So getting paragraphs of survivors only can be really, it's a really good micro break for the developers. I think it's a little bit difficult to do these too often because the people who main one role and one role only might feel like they're being left out, right? So if you only release a survivor, then killer mains are going to be sitting there wondering where their new toys are. But vice versa, if you only release a killer, then survivor mains are going to be wondering where their new toys are. So it's something that's really like a more of a give and take. And I believe really and honestly that while these micro breaks are important, it can also feel bad for the player base sometimes. But there's a big opportunity that paragraph chapters do present, and that is the opportunity to, like I said earlier, focus more on balance changes. There's a lot of open space when you're not implementing both a map and an additional character into the game. So you release one character and then you can do things like buff killers who need it and nerf killers who need it and rework killers who need it and things like perk overhauls and graphical updates and quality of life changes. You can effectively have a bigger patch when you don't have to worry about also slipping in additional characters. I think my biggest problem with paragraph chapters in general is that I just don't like the idea of having to release new characters so often. Eventually, I mean, and some people think it's already getting to this point. Eventually, this game is just going to become so bloated with characters, and they're eventually going to have to start making characters free. I did an entire video on chapters that I think should be free in the base game to begin with, just because, like, at this point, you have so many chapters and it costs so much money for people to catch up, and there's a lot to be discussed about the new player experience. But on the other hand, I do recognize that paragraph chapters are a compromise of sorts. They're not releasing as many characters, and in return, we are getting these big balance patches. But as always, I don't just make these videos to spout my opinions at you. I make these videos so that I can hear your thoughts as well. So please leave your thoughts down below. And as always, a great big special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today, get perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. Love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.